All right, welcome to the Sushi Onsen AMA, where we host projects that have partnered through the Onsen program and give them a platform to reach a larger audience. Today we have Adrian and Kevin from DFX Finance team with us. Thanks, guys, for coming out, and welcome to the sushi community.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for
Really
having
excited to
us.
be here.
So, my broad understanding of DFX Finance is that it's essentially an AMM that is specifically tailored for intercurrency, inter-fiat currency, but crypto versions of fiat, but essentially, swapping between these different national currencies. Do you guys want to give sort of a explainer of sort of what DFX Finance is doing and what you guys are building out?
Yeah, sure. I think you mostly got it right. DFX is basically an AMM, a protocol for the exchange of stablecoins that are pegged to foreign currencies, or any kind of fiat currencies, right? So that could be USDC. The other coins on our platform are CADC for the Canadian dollar, EURS for the euros, and also XSGD for the Singaporean dollar. So the idea is to kind of bring Forex, foreign exchange, onto the blockchain where things can happen a lot more efficiently, and also just open up the doors for a lot of these other countries who may not want to always be dealing with USDC all the time, because that's kind of the uh, most popular stablecoin right now on all of these DeFi apps. But obviously, that's one aspect of it. Kevin, do you want to add a little bit more as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So right now we're mainly dealing with fiat-backed currency. We think that's the foundation of DFX. But we understand that there might be a time where we have to consider other, like maybe crypto-backed stable coins, synthetic stable coins, and really just any way to really get different currencies onto the blockchain, onto DeFi. We think there's a massive market for non-US dollar stable coins. It's just starting. DFX will be the catalyst for it. We're bootstrapping liquidity in many of these different currencies right now, and really facilitating an FX market on DeFi. How do we, build global financial infrastructure without foreign exchange? Right, it is right now the largest financial market in the world, and that needs to live on DeFi if we, want to get to the promised land of building decentralized finance.
Awesome. And just for everybody listening in, this is like a totally open AMA, so if you have any questions, you should see a button down at the bottom that allows you to like raise your hand, and I'll get you guys in here so that you can ask your questions if you do. But I sort of wanted to get into the specifics of how you guys are building out your AMM, because it's quite different than any other implementation that I've seen, where you guys are apparently having like a dynamic curve, and that curve is adjusted based on the actual Oracle prices. How does that all work?
Yeah, so we're actually inspired by, obviously, the whole innovation of AMMs is just really interesting, and it has only been 1 or 2 years since that has been invented. However, we think that there's also room for kind of like the next generation of AMMs, and we've been taking a lot of inspiration from a lot of different protocols that have tried to be more efficient, more capital efficient, provide a better price. Uh, and one of the ways to do that is to have a curve that is dynamic and also optimized around a specific price point, right? So we've seen, like much earlier, we've seen with like Curve, the way they do that is to have a really flat part of their bonding curve that optimizes assets, a swapping of assets that have very similar value, like to like, or, where you're swapping between USDC and USDT and DAI. Those are all very similar. And then there's actually some of the other inspirations that we looked at was Dodo, and also the Shell protocol. they offer, just very interesting spin-offs of this technology where they're able to do more more of a focus on capital efficiency. And now that we've seen Uniswap V3 come out with their take on that as well. So we're kind of taking all these ideas. We want to generate a curve that optimizes for a specific price point and have this shift according to what our Chainlink feeds tell us that the actual spot price is on the market. Yeah.
Yeah, I can expand on that a little bit more. So, w- so what we were doing, we're not building sort of what we call like a generalized AMM. So we actually tailor it in very specific areas so that it works for low volatility trading and FX mainly, because we're not looking to like bootstrap new tokens, and which is what, like, like the Uniswaps, the Sushi, Bancors, and all these other AMMs try to do, where you sort of have price discovery, and it sort of becomes like an oracle. But we know what the external price of, let's just say, Canadian dollar or the euro or the Singapore dollar is. So we actually leverage that information through Chainlink to sort of set that mid spot, and then our bonding curve will basically adjust based on that price that we get, and like the levels in the pools and the fees will adjust to set that price, which you can't really do unless there's an external price for certain assets. So that's how we're sort of doing it, and we're really tailoring it for that FX use case. We also have like dozens and dozens of years of historical FX data that we can use to tailor different currency curves. So the Canadian dollar bonding curve will look different than the euro, which will look different than the Singapore dollar, because they'll all be optimized based on historical backtested data.
Gotcha. So what type of differences in the bonding curve there would come out because of historical, like, I guess, are you talking just about like historical price data or
Uh-huh.
some other historical
Historical
volatility? Or
price and volatility, those are the two main ones, mainly because like you might have like currencies like I don't know, like pesos, rupees, and whatnot, that have higher volatility against the US dollar. So those ones will have, quote unquote, a more rounded curve, whereas currencies like that are more stable, probably like G10 currencies, will have a more flat bonding curve, allowing it to be a little more capital efficient.
Yeah, so if you remember from some of the diagrams from how the curve white paper looked, and there's this flat part, right, that makes it really efficient to trade. That flat part could be bigger or smaller depending on the historical volatility that we see for these specific pairs.
Yeah, you can sort of think of it as like in the new like Uniswap sort of a scenario where people can sort of set price points in a way where like they optimize it in a way that, hey, like Ether might be mainly trading between the 1500 to 2000 price range. So they set the two spots there, where we sort of do like, hey, Canadian dollar is generally traded between like these two price points with the US dollar, but we don't say like, let's just say 1.2 to 1.3. What we do is like we set like probably like a percentage, like, hey, within like 2% of the Chainlink Oracle price. So what happens, that capital efficiency shifts along with that Chainlink Oracle price. Whereas, like, let's just say you're using Uniswap V3, you have to set like specific numbers and actual values. And once it goes past that value, your liquidity stops being used in the AMM. Whereas for us, it keeps shifting along that bonding curve based on that Oracle price.
gotcha. Yeah. So basically, in order for Uniswap V3 to replicate what you guys are doing, they'd have to build like another layer on top that had like an entire, operator layer where people were, updating Oracle prices. And, but you guys are sort of an all-in-one, sort of combine the Oracle prices automatically with the curves. And so when the bonding curves are adjusting based on the Oracle price, that's essentially like creating additional slippage in the wrong, and if you're trading against the peg, and pot or negative slippage if you're trading for or towards the peg, I guess, is how I'm thinking about it in my head. Am I close there?
Yeah, exactly. So depending on the ratio in the pool, we also have dynamic fees. So the fees can shift from, let's just say, like 10 basis points to 15 to 20 basis points, depending on what that pool ratio looks like. And once it hits like a certain threshold in terms of the fees, it will adjust the price, so that it would always sort of go back to the medium ratio. Right now it's at a 50-50. It could change to a different ratio in the future.
Gotcha. I just wanted to put out another reminder that it's a totally open AMA. So if anybody has any questions, you can push the, I think, raise your hand button on the bottom, and I'll be able to get you in here. So you guys have upcoming version 0.5, right?
Yep, that's right. And so V0.5 is kind of like our it's almost like the beta version of our V1, which is where all of this finally launches. Because currently we have the V0 launch, which was basically uh, mostly just essentially a farming campaign to see if we could garner the attention and also bootstrap liquidity for some of these stable coins that a lot of people haven't heard of, like the CADC or XSGD and EURS, a little bit more popular. So with 0.5, we like 0.5 and V1, we're going to have basically, we're trying to do the same things. We're going to have the same contracts basically. But in V0.5, those would not be audited yet because, well, we wanted to contract with the best, and we kind of made the appointment in the booking in December, and the earliest they could give us was end of April. So we didn't want to just sit on our hands until end of April and May comes around, right? So we decided to create this V0.5, this intermediate thing where we can actually start to put in some of our own money and try to test it out. There will be a cap on the contribution limits and things like that. But this is the V0.5 is exciting because it's when all our new code is actually going to come out, when we're actually going to put our prototype essentially of what we're trying to do. And hopefully having about a month of V0.5 being out, we'll learn a lot, we'll get it fully audited, and once V1 comes out, we'll be that's going to be the one thing that we want everyone to have their eyes on, essentially.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And it was a little bit unclear to me when I was reading. Does 0.5 have dynamically adjusting curves, or is that for V1?
Yep. So V0.5 is going to have all the features that we expect V1 to have. It's just
Okay.
more of a beta because we're not exactly sure how it would work. And so if there are no catastrophic issues, then V0.5 is going to be very nearly identical to V1.
Gotcha. Um, have you guys gotten any interest from institutional clients who are looking to actually like move their main business, their like Forex business, into the crypto space?
I could jump in on this one. So we're part of the DeFi Alliance, a group of probably more than like 50 market makers and liquidity providers. We're working with different partners there to provide um, basically an option for them to trade FX on the blockchain. A lot of them already have some kind of uh, forex trading business outside of crypto. We want to sort of bring in these people to come in and sort of help maintain the peg. You know, our AMM, be a participant, market make, provide liquidity, and really, you know, make make DFX one of the biggest like FX markets in the world, or a way for us to sort of like become a primary source for FX data, especially on the weekends, right? So surprisingly, Forex doesn't actually trade on the weekends, so sometimes you actually don't get a price. So we can actually become a primary market in times when FX stops trading on the market. And I think there's lots of opportunities for to do stuff like that.
Yeah, I've noticed that in like the synthetic silver markets on crypto as well. Like on the weekends, it can get sort of ridiculous on some of the price differences. Yeah, that's interesting. It definitely makes sense to sort of target the uh, liquidity provider and sort of market maker types to get them onboarded. Um, so past V 1.0, I mean, there's nothing any written down on the roadmap, so you don't have to announce anything that you don't want to. But do you guys have any ideas or plans past V1?
Yeah, absolutely. So V1 is going to be exciting, but it doesn't. There's still issues to be solved, like scalability. What we do generally is provide like institutional pricing to retail users, but once we factor in gas prices, it becomes like significantly more expensive than what you probably can get at a bank. So we need to sort of like work on that. We're evaluating our options, seeing where other players are going, watching what Sushi is doing, watching what Uni is doing, understanding what the landscape looks like and how we can, port liquidity, leverage different technologies, bridging technologies, and so forth, to provide our AMM to, I guess, like different users at a lower cost. That's one of the main things after V1. And we sort of consider DFX more of like an infrastructure layer. So there's going to be a lot of integrations, a lot of partnerships. We want people to build on top of DFX. People could be building remittance applications. They could be building like FX futures and options and all these different cool markets on top of DFX, and use DFX as more of like a spot settlement layer for different products. So lots ahead. Were lots of partnerships and really integrations along the way after V1.
Do you guys have any interest in potentially having multiple forms of stable coins for each type of fiat currency, or are you more focusing on a single stable coin for each fiat?
I think for the short to midterm, um, we're gonna try to not spread ourselves too thin, and we really want to put our efforts where where it counts, right? And for us, one of the special core competencies we have is our ability to reach out to some of these fiat-backed stable coins and kind of get them on board, like XSGD, for example, because like I think a lot of people have been asking us about some of these algorithmically backed or these other types of stable coins, which we also think are really interesting and probably have a place in DFX long term. But being that we have currently quite a small team, and a lot of these things are probably going to be um, delegated to the DAO later on, where people vote in the tokens that they think make sense for our community. I think that as as it seems like from right now, in the next few months, I think we're going to focus more on specifically different fiat-backed currencies so that we can get more countries on board. And I don't know if Kevin has a bit more to say about that.
Yeah, and I want to get to your point of like, having multiple currencies or multiple forms of the same currency. I think that was your question, like, like maybe different forms of the euro or the Singapore dollar or whatever. I think uh, we're not ruling it out. What the issue is here is fragmentation of liquidity. So once you sort of like have different forms of the same currency, some people are trading on one currency and a bunch of other people are trading on another one. You sort of get price slippage. But with that, I guess you can potentially are between it as long as like I guess like there's a big enough community for both sort of like versions of the same currency. uh Not ruling it out, but it just becomes less efficient long term. But it's really up to the community. We're going to be releasing our DAO when we launch V1. So if the community wants two different versions of the same currency, it can happen.
Gotcha. Awesome. That makes a lot of sense. So, so then on these stable coins, you chose like specifically, I guess I'll choose out XSGD because to be honest, I've never heard of the stable coin, but I mean, I'm just learning about it today. Sort of what properties or I guess aspects of a stable coin do you guys look for when you were choosing these ones out?
Yeah, so really good question. Uh, w- there's actually a few things that we look into, especially in our initial set of stable coins. We looked to see if they were properly regulated. And initially, we were looking for mainly fiat-backed stablecoins because they held their peg a little better. So that was one criteria. Um, how efficient were their on and off ramps? So how easy was it for people to move from fiat Singapore dollars to XSGD? So that's a big one that we were looking into. But really, yeah, those three different criterias really, stood out for us. If they were properly regulated, they had good on-off ramps, then it made sense for us to onboard them.
Cool, cool. That makes sense. Is XSGD, is it just a private company that sort of mints and handles that, or are they attached to some exchange or something like Coinbase?
Yeah. So they're attached to an exchange. The exchange is Xfers out in Singapore. So they are also like they're an exchange and stablecoin issuer, and they do it not so differently than I guess like how USDC does, for example.
Hmm. Cool, cool, cool. All right, I'm scared to ask, but does anybody in the audience have any questions? Crickets, they love us. Hmm. So, so for the DFX token, is that a fee generating token where stakers get some portion of the fees, or is it just purely a governance token?
Right now, it is, well, to be honest, right now it's not even a token because our DAO is an out. But the premise is that it will be a governance token. Our DAO will launch when we launch V1. Right now, there's really not too much you can do with the DFX token until then. But again, once governance goes live, it's up to the community if they want it to be a fee generating token or not. So we'll leave that up to the community at that point.
Are you guys developing or developed your own governance contract, or did you guys fork like Compound's governance, for instance, or something like that? I don't
We're
even know
looking into
Compound's governance.
Compound and all of the existing solutions. I think one of the philosophies we have is that we don't want to completely build things from scratch. We don't want to reinvent the wheel if there's already really good tools out there, right? So definitely, we're Compound is one of the leading ones that we're looking at, but we haven't exactly committed to anything for now. I think in terms of governance, we're probably in the short term we might just start off with a snapshot, um, just to get like an idea of what the community feels like, and then eventually we're gonna move to a more on-chain compound like type of thing. The other usage for the token I think wasn't really mentioned, was that because of all the work that is required to get everyone on board. Like for example, with XSGD, we had to talk to Xfers, because they're the issuers of the token. We also worked with some of the crypto on ramps so that people in Southeast Asia could easily get XSGD, for example. Like bringing that all together takes a lot of work, and I think the governance token could really give the team um, kind of a signal from the direction from the community, what direction the community wants to take in terms of maybe for example, if they really want us to focus all our efforts on the British pound, for example, then those tokens could allow them to signal that to the team, and that could be something that we could focus on and be really it would be a really useful signal for us to have.
Gotcha. Yeah, yeah. Snapshot is pretty useful just as like a quick and dirty solution. And so it's not off the table that the DFX token could be guaranteed some fees from the platform? Well,
It is.
not even not guaranteed by you guys, just but guaranteed as in if it was voted in, it could be guaranteed via smart contract.
Yep, that's right. We'll leave that to the community, how they choose to do that. But once they go, once once the DAO is live, that proposal can be taken up by the community.
Yeah, I think like in the long term, we really do want every aspect of the AMM to be controlled by the community, right? Like, and a lot of other projects are already doing that now. There are some other projects that may want to retain like a commanding role or whatnot, and our presence will always be around, but we really want the community to drive some of these decisions, especially when we're dealing with sometimes it can be um, really impactful depending on what tokens we are approved and how things are done, in this DeFi space.
Gotcha. Well, I'm gonna sort of let everybody know that, if you got any questions, feel free to ask them. Raise your hand. Um, just one sort of random topic I wanted to bring up with you guys is sort of what your thoughts were on um, sort of protocol controlled value stuff, because like, and this is not directly related to you guys, but it's a little bit related. There's that project Fei, and they have protocol controlled value that basically can take LP out of a pair, make a trade in a flash loan transaction, uh, to push the price back into peg, and then they can redeposit liquidity at the correct ratio. I was just curious if you guys had any like thoughts on strategies like that, or if it had any application to what you guys were building at all.
So I don't think we've included that capability into our smart contract where we can actually leverage the the value in the smart contracts, and I guess like use it to do flash loans and so forth. So it is more standard AMM, where you still get LP tokens. They're not NFTs. It's pretty standard mechanisms, but the main difference is that we're just using an oracle and optimizing for FX currencies. We haven't really looked into like the ability to sort of bring it back, bring I guess the price back to quote unquote par value using any internal mechanisms. We're allowing the market to dictate that in a lot of ways, mainly because like what the with Fay, it's supposed to be $1, and if it's not $1, then it's wrong. But for us, that may not always be the case, where the price on chain and off chain might have a difference, but it might be different for particular reasons. It might be because it's hard to get in and out of a currency in such a way that there might be a discount on the on-chain version of it. You see it with like kimchi premiums before, where a price in one particular country might be different from the rest of the world. So that can actually be the case with DFX and some of the currencies that are traded on DFX.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, where like a strategy
Yeah,
for responding to Oracle prices, you could actually just get like just constantly arbed.
Yeah, and it might not be quote unquote like that might not be what the market wants and what it really is. So we'll let the market participants to dictate what that price should be on chain versus like off chain. And if they see an opportunity to arb, then they should be able to quote unquote make money off of that.
right. Yeah. With respect to like protocol controlled value, just bringing the discussion back to a more broader point here. Like what Faye doing is, I think, is really interesting, and I think it works really well for them. But there's a lot of things that haven't really been proven out to have like a really solid product market fit where everyone is using it. Like for example, a lot of AMMs do have, like, if you're forking off of Uniswap V2, for example, you have the ability to do these flash loans with the underlying liquidity. But even that doesn't seem to be that popular so far. And we really want to, this goes back to our philosophy of our product strategy. We don't want to reinvent, something that hasn't really been kind of like proven out in a sense. So if we probably wouldn't be trying to take our underlying liquidity and doing some wacky things with it, just because we want to make sure that our LPs are safe, and we really want to focus on our core competency, right? And this kind of philosophy applies to how we're looking at L2 as well, right? Like a lot of people, I don't know, they always ask us, what layer 2 are we looking at? Because obviously gas on Ethereum is a big issue. And our response is always the same. We want to see something that has traction, that is getting more battle tested with activity before we really make that commitment. But we are also keeping our eyes on all of the competing solutions and really closely looking and tracking and testing as well on some of these platforms.
Gotcha, awesome. Also, I just realized, should I invite Henry up here? He's got DFX in his name.
Yeah, if he wants to talk.
All right, Henry, if you're shy, don't feel bad, but I sent you an invite. Have you had any considerations to having or like reached out to MakerDAO, for instance, to sort of gauge sentiment on getting sort of like the LP tokens for DFX? Just sort of a preliminary talks, but getting the LP tokens added as collateral to various DeFi platforms.
I think that's going to be like one of the biggest use cases, mainly because these LP tokens they end up being very, very good collateral for loan systems, mainly because they're they don't have a lot of volatility. So we do think that these LP tokens will make it onto a lot of these platforms. We I know I've had conversations with Maker a while ago, but this was like before we even we're close to a product. It's something that will sort of re-engage as we get closer to our V1 launch. Or we're looking at, like the Aves of the world, and just like anywhere that can leverage our LP tokens, um, because we think that it's very very high quality assets that are being put into our pools.
Yeah, I think like that's one aspect of DFX that's not talked about as much is that we're an AMM of, pretty solid fiat-backed stable coins, right? What is the biggest fear when people become LPs and when people, deal with AMMs? It's always impermanent loss, right? And for us, that is always basically limited to the actual currency risk, the currency exposure. So if, for example, you're an LP to the CADC USDC pool, you you basically all the IL that you're gonna get, the impermanent loss that you're gonna get is basically the difference between the Canadian dollar and US dollar, which, compared to the rest of crypto, is super, super, super stable, right? And at the same time, these are like, we're not talking about, ESD or like some of these algo-backed stablecoins. These are all, for now, for the meantime, fiat-backed stablecoins. So they tend to hold their peg extremely well as well. So that's one thing that I think a lot of people miss because we're not just an AMM. We actually have these LP tokens, like Kevin said, which have a property of being a lot, so-called safer, quote unquote safer, quote unquote more stable than a lot of other LP tokens in the DeFi space right now.
All right, sorry, I'm just going over my notes. Are there any topics that you guys think I have missed over or totally failed to talk about? And just another reminder to everybody listening in that I don't know, somebody send me a message in chat, I guess, if it's not working, but I'm pretty sure it's working. You can just click a button to raise your hand if you would like to ask a question.
I wonder if people may not want to use their voice and they want to type out a question instead. Is there a way for them to do that?
Yeah, if they have a question, they don't have a microphone or are too shy, that's okay. You can just ping me like at Magic Turtle in the general chat in Sushi Swap in the Sushi Discord. Um, yeah, if you just scroll up on the left bar, you should see the general channel. If anybody had something that is. Can we look forward to DFX NFTs? Where are the NFTs?
That so with I mean that could be an interesting marketing play. We don't have any specific plans right now, but I mean personally I'm definitely keeping my eye on the NFT space. I have a whole bunch of NFTs. Definitely spent way too much money on them. But where it makes sense, we're definitely happy to. And if there are also anyone in the community that's like interested in making some art for us, like memes or otherwise, certainly very happy to entertain those ideas and have that discussion. I will say, like, we're actually also looking to hire people. Specifically, I think one of the biggest things that we really want to get some help on is probably a community manager. So if anyone knows anyone, if anyone here might be interested, we're definitely happy to talk about cooperating in that way.
Awesome. So we got some DF socks coming down the pipeline. This is what I'm hearing.
Can't rule it out. Can't rule it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Any fun news that you guys know uh
We
that
have a
came out
hand up
recently?
in the audience.
Oh,
Oh no, it's gone now.
oh,
It's okay. They were probably shy, or they clicked it by accident.
who was it? What was their name?
I don't want to. You don't want to call out anyone if they don't want to. If they want to raise it again, feel free to do it now.
Yeah, I think a lot of people in the audience are actually from our Discord, so maybe they're not they've already asked all the questions they're curious about on our Discord, maybe.
Fair enough, fair enough. Oh, we got a request from Knight.
Hello. I was going to ask about, do you have any job opportunities or such?
Yeah, so like I was saying before, we're really focused on community manager right now. We're also happy to talk if there are other skills being offered on the market.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Knight, for that question. Are you guys looking for devs, or are you pretty good on the dev side? Well, I'm sure everybody everywhere is looking for more devs constantly.
Yeah, exactly. Like I think like right now, with regards to what we have planned, in the short term, we're fine. It's slow, but like you said, it's always hard to find devs, and we do want like more sets of eyes on some of our code. So, if anyone is interested in being a dev, definitely reach out. But that's like especially because V0.5 is functionally done, and V1 is not going to change too much from that. Most of the development will probably happen a little bit after. Um, that being said, we do want to make contact with anyone who's interested in developing for DFX.
Yeah, I mean, and since I have you guys here and you guys are, I, I think you guys are all developers. Uh, for somebody who has maybe like they know Java, JavaScript, HTML, CSS, maybe some C++, but they have never done anything with Solidity or anything like that, what would you tell to that person to like what sort of resources should they be looking at to get a grip of, what's going on and how to get up to speed?
So I think like that's kind of like what my path was like several years ago when I discovered Ethereum. Basically, I think it's important to kind of stick to the things that you already know and find interesting, and then kind of slowly move towards that direction. So if you're a web developer, or you're like a web 2 developer, essentially, all these technologies like React, JavaScript, CSS. um, One of the best things to do is look at these boilerplate projects and kind of just build on top of them, right? So Hard Hat has a really good tutorial where they go through like a very simple smart contract, and then you can learn to build a front end with it with like ethers.js and React and all that stuff. And I personally, if you can message me or whatever, I have a GitHub where I have created like a boilerplate for people who want to build front ends for certain smart contracts, things like that. I'm always very passionate about helping people, coming from Web 2, and they want to get onto Web 3, for example. I think that's a really huge and untapped kind of bridge that people kind of overlook. Because if you think about it, most of the developers in this world are actually web developers, right? And we're not exactly targeting web developers to become dApp developers either. A lot of times, these smart contract developers come from like academia, or maybe some of the more back end stuff, but not a lot of like CSS gurus, for example, um, try to dip their toe into the blockchain world, and I think that's kind of a missed opportunity. So that's definitely something that we're looking for. If you're curious about the front end side of things, if you've got some design skills, like actually, like we might want to contract with some designers as well. Like these are all really interesting things that at least I personally am really happy to talk with.
Yeah, thanks. I will definitely ping you after the AMA to get that GitHub. Not for me personally, because I am just a total nobody coder. I can't code for shit. But I've got a number of friends who are pretty heavy coders, and they all like turn their nose at DeFi and blockchain just because I think
Yeah,
they
I
don't
know how
really.
that feels. You go, like it's like I have some friends who are developers, and then it's like I haven't talked to them in a while, and they're like, "Oh, hey, Adrian, what are you doing?" I tell them what I'm doing, and they're like, "Oh, yeah, that scammy blockchain stuff." Okay, and there's a lot of prejudice.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely comes from a good place from them, but it's also just like you have to be immersed in the space to like really understand what's going on up to date.
It's true.
And I
Like
think,
there are a lot of scams out there, right? That's kind of the issue, but it's
mhm.
part of growing pains.
And I think Knight has another question, so I'll bring him up.
Do you think DFX will be listed on the Binance?
That's really up to Binance and not us. If they want to list us, they're very welcome to. I'll give it a retweet. I give them a thumbs up. But it's I don't think we are in a position to, like take a whole bunch of money and to pay for a listing on centralized exchanges.
Okay.
I think that's kind of the sentiment these days as well. Like a lot of these DeFi projects, this isn't like back in 2017. Everyone's always like, when listing, when exchange listing, right? Nowadays, Uniswap is really ubiquitously used, even though people complain about the gas prices and Sushi Swap, my favorite. I use that a lot, and so there's like a lot of options these days. You don't have to get on Binance or Coinbase or whatnot. Even though there's advantages for them, it may be a little bit more user friendly for newbies, but it's just not as important as it used to be. But I wouldn't be against it. Like if they want to list us, sure.
Yeah, we can't fold to Binance anymore, so it's a bad look.
No, yeah, can't let him push us around anymore.
But I mean, I think this is getting to a good place to wrap up. If anybody in the audience has any questions, I don't want to cut anybody off or call it early, but let's get into a good spot where I think we talked about a lot of topics. So yeah, nobody's requesting. So thank you, Adrian, Henry, Kevin. Thank you guys for coming out and talking about DFX. Um, what is the timeline for V0.5 right now?
So V0.5, we were targeting end of this week. We really want to make sure we test things out a little bit more. So we might be slipping, because it's already Thursday, right? End of next week would be tomorrow at best. And I don't know if it's wise to like rush, and also like launching things on a Friday may not be a good idea. So hopefully early next week, like Monday, Tuesdays, where things aren't, too ugly, and then, we're just making sure it works well. Um, yeah, and then hopefully we'll have some people who want to take that risk. I want to make another disclaimer that 0.5 is unaudited, and like I don't enjoy pushing unaudited code, but I think the community, it's better for the community to see it and have it there, rather than to just hide it until for another month or two, right? So please be careful. Do not put in any money that you're not willing to lose. We will have limits on, contribution limits as well, so that people don't ape in and stuff like that. But do keep an eye out. Join our Discord if you're not there already. We should be saying something soon. Next week or so.
Awesome. And I mean, also you guys have had the code for a while, so I imagine there's been some level of basically looking at it and just making sure that you didn't do anything stupid. But that's a good disclaimer that the audit is pending April something.
Yeah, the audit, I think, Henry and Kevin, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we were scheduled for the auditing begins end of April, so probably early
It's a little
May.
earlier than that. It's a little
Is it
earlier than that.
okay? Maybe it was like mid or early. I don't know. I just don't want to promise anything. I think early May is like a safe timeline to think about, right?
For V1, yes.
Yeah.
All right. Awesome. Thank you guys for coming out. Just wanted to announce that there's going to be a sushi forum later today at 9 p.m. UTC. And there's also going to be another Onsen AMA tomorrow at a time. I'll look that up later. But yeah, thank you guys so much for coming out. It was super awesome getting to talk to you, and I really appreciate everything. Oh, okay, so sorry, never mind. One person was requesting for a second, but they ran away.
Oh, thanks for having us.
Yeah,
Very nice
guys,
to be
take
here.
it easy, stay safe.
Thanks, guys.